Hello viewers and welcome to another match of Warhammer 40,000 Conquest. My name is Mitch and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today I present a game featuring both of our Boundless Hate Warpack Warlords. On the right we have Elizabeth Malette of the Tactical Squad podcast playing as Barzul the Hatebound, while to the left we have a fellow named Colin Marshall whom instead is going to be playing as Archon Salaine Morn. Liz to the right begins the game with our initiative token, and her initial deploy action is placing a copy of Splintered Path Acolyte out to planet number 4. For the cost of 1, that cultist trait unit has a command icon, 1 attack, as well as 1 hit point, and upon attempting to deploy a demon, you can sacrifice that unit in order to decrease its cost by 2, while in Colin's HQ, he puts out a copy of the 2-cost unique support Archon's Palace, and upon an enemy winning a command struggle, you can simply pick that associated planet and either shut off its card or resource bonus, including any and all modifiers, albeit at the cost of exhausting that support. At planet number 2, Liz throws down a Void Pirate, 1 cost, 1 command icon, plus 1 card bonus, and it looks like we see our first dedicated combat unit in the Hellion Gang played out by our Archon at planet number 1. For the cost of 2, it's got a command icon, 2 attack, as well as 2 hit points. It's got the flying keyword, and it has the Raider trait, and it's played out to a red material type icon possessing planet, which means that it triggers Salaine Morn's ability, which refunds 1 resource up to 1 time per phase whenever you happen to play a Raider or Cabalite trait unit. That Splintered Path Acolyte is sacrificed so that Liz can put out one of her own formidable combat units. It's the 5-cost elite Ravenous Fleshhounds put out to planet number 1, 1 command icon, 3 attack, a colossal pool of 6 hit points, and as an action you can sacrifice a cultist trait unit in order to remove up to 5 damage tokens from that unit. And considering that Barzul himself is a bit of a 0-5 damage sponge, that could make a monumentally difficult to remove unit. But in the meantime, at planet number 2, we've got a copy of Slith Mercenary played out by Colin, 1 cost, 2 command icon, 2 attack, 2 hit points, but your opponent can purchase it for the cost of 2, although you can purchase it back for the additional investment of 2 resources. At planet number 3 for Liz, we've got a copy of the 2-cost cultist trait, Chaos Fanatics, 2 command icons, 1 attack, as well as 2 hit points. And last but not least, presumably at planet number 4, we've got a copy of Incubus Warrior played out by Archon Salaine Morn. 2 cost, 2 command icons, 3 attack, as well as just 1 hit point. And as we get ready for our combat phase, we can see that Liz has put out an alternate art version of Promotion onto her Void Pirate at planet number 2. So if you can't outright purchase the Slith Mercenary, at the very least you can beat them. So our players are currently deciding where exactly they want to send their warlords, and remember that our current planet under contest, number 1, is going to be Taurus. So if at any point you win a battle at that planet and you control fewer units than does your opponent, you're rewarded in the form of either drawing the top 3 cards of your deck and slotting those immediately into hand, or otherwise you can fish 3 tokens out of the resource token bank and immediately add those onto your tabletop. Looks like Barzul's going to go to planet number 1, so like I said before, he's a 0-5. Whenever a unit at his planet takes damage, he can basically strip it back onto himself, but that unit does have to be successfully dealt damage and survive first. And Archon Salaine Morn instead shows up at planet number 2, and as a 2-7, she's a reasonably resilient powerhouse in and of herself, at least compared to a Hail Barzul. But at planet number 1, that's going to be a card and a resource to the right for Liz. Planet number 2 is going to be a card and a resource to the left for Colin. Planet number 3 is going to be a card and a resource, but of course at some point we've seen Archon's Palace be activated, and I can only imagine that's probably going to have shut off one of these card bonuses for Liz. Planet number 4, that is going to be a 2-card bonus to the left there for Colin. Looks like once our combat phase has begun, we see Archon's Terror rout the Ravenous Fleshhounds away from planet number 1, and even though Liz has her warlord sitting at that planet, there's not a whole hell of a lot that Barzul is going to be able to do to resist that Hellion Gang, so Liz may as well use her initial combat turn because she has initiative at that planet to retreat. It seems rather silly to just take a bunch of damage, and at present, it's going to be 4 units in Archon Salaine Morn's, playmat area relative to 4 units for Liz. So, planet number 2, that Slith Mercenary is going to take a swing. That's going to be a Dead Void Pirate. It's going to be a copy of Promotion Gone, and that is going to be an activated Aatrox Prime, which is going to deal a single point of damage out to that Chaos Fanatics. So, it looks like we're already in the process of moving into our HQ phase. That's going to be 4 resources and 2 cards for each of our players. That first turn, Archon's Palace can help create such a fantastic economy discrepancy between our 2 players over the course of a game, and it looks like our Archon is currently possessing 1 red and 1 green planet type icon. So if Salaine Morn ends up picking up our current planet number 1, our next round's planets, we could see a victory as early as that. And then for Liz, if she wins 3, 4, 5 planets in a row, really any of these planets, they've all got blue technology icons, and any 3 of them will afford either player a victory condition. So this could be a relatively quick game. We'll have to see how things end up being played out. But Colin, to the left, currently has our initiative token. We're waiting on his deploy action. And what exactly is it going to be? Note that it's going to be limit once per phase that Archon Salaine Morn can trigger her resource refund ability off of red material type icon planets only. One of her signature army units is the Shadowed Thorns Pillagers. It's a 2 cost, 2 attack, 2 hit point, 1 command icon unit with ambush, and that allows you to benefit from that same ability during the combat phase as well. Looks like we've got a new copy of Incubus Warrior being played out to planet number 3 so that Colin can hopefully pick up a couple of cards during the command phase, and he's got his own alternate art copy of Promotion now affixed to an Incubus Warrior at planet number 2. So 4 command icons definitely beats the 2 associated with that Chaos Fanatics, and considering that planet number 1 currently under contest is going to be Aatrox Prime, if Colin is allowed to fire that off again, that could be a dead Chaos Fanatics at planet number 2. Note that Liz has thrown out her signature attachment, the Butcher's Nails, onto her Warlord for the cost of 1. It grants Barzul Brutal when Hail. Note he's a 0/5 normally, and when he's bloodied, he not only reverts to his 3/11 kind of amped up steroidal Cornate form, but he also has Armor Bane. And if there's anything we've learned from Captain Cato Sicarius wielding the Talisarian Tempest Blade, it's that is a pretty powerful effect, that Armor Bane on your Warlord. But to the left, Colin throws out a copy of Raid. If you've got fewer resource tokens than your opponent for the cost of nothing except for a card, you get +1 resource. Your opponent gets -1 resource, again feeding into that economy discrepancy. And looks like, before I talk about Slaaneish's Temptation, that is going to be a devastating copy of Sowing Chaos. So that was a Slith Mercenary killed, that was 2 Incubus Warriors destroyed, and that was also a copy of Promotion removed. That's kind of the shitty thing about each and every planet having those blue technology icons, is you're very susceptible to falling victim to Sowing Chaos. And if Liz has got Ravenous Fleshhounds in her deck, if she's got, oh god, the 3-cost Barzul's Cleavers, the signature army unit, then you're, not immune to Sowing Chaos. But that was a spectacular effect, so good on you, Elizabeth. That was a hell of a thing, and all just at the cost of getting rid of a 1-cost Chaos Fanatic that was doing jack shit anyways. So, at planet number 5, we've currently got a copy of Slaaneish's Temptation, 2-cost unique attachment. Whenever your opponent happens to deploy a unit to any non-attached planet, like planets 1 through 4, you increase the number of resources that unit costs by 1, and even though Archon Salaine Morn refunds a resource, like those Shadowed Thorn Pillagers put out to planets 1, 2, or 4, or, 5, they're still going to cost 2. Well, they cost their base amount plus the premium, and then, only then, if you can afford them, do you actually get that refund. So it looks like Barzul shows up to planet number 1. Presumably, he's going to win that entirely uncontested, unless we see a Shadowed Thorns Pillager dropped off there, but still, it's not as though Liz can't kill a single 2/2 unit. And instead, Archon Salaine Morn shows up to planet number 5 to rid Atraxis sector of the temptation of our, ruinous power there. So at planet number 1, we see Archon's Palace being activated. I could only imagine, because Liz didn't draw a card, that's going to be the card bonus being shut off. And therefore, that is going to just be 1 resource for Liz from planet number 1. And then at planet number 5, it's funny how few units there are on the board. That is going to be Archon Salaine Morn winning a whopping 1 resource for herself. So Aatrox Prime has no eligible targets it can bombard an adjacent planet or the enemy HQ, but there are no enemy units at that location, so it does no good to trigger it. Looks like Yvarn is going to be won by Archon Salaine Morn. For better or worse, she's going to drop off that copy of Hellion Gang well outside of Liz's earliest victory condition, and what's very interesting about that is, it's going to sit there and collect just one resource, but we did not see Yvarn triggered. Normally, that's a pretty sketchy thing to do when you're playing against a Chaos player that's running something like a Ravenous Fleshhounds, because on the off chance that you're enabling your opponent to throw out like a Black Legion Helldrake or any number of other outlandish, absurdly powerful Chaos elites, that would be looking to go all the way bad for Archon Salaine Morn, whom probably doesn't run anything more formidable than, like a Clavex War Leader or something like that. And you definitely want to save that unit for conventional play. So, looks like we've got another HQ phase having come and gone. We've seen our final planet now. Planet number 5 is going to be Boundless, the random card discard planet that's got a hefty 2-card bonus associated with it. It's going to be the initiative back over to Liz's hand, I believe. And at planet number 1, Liz puts out a copy of the 4-cost unique Chaos faction unit, Rograx Bloodhand. 1 command icon, 2 attack, as well as a just huge pool of 5 hit points. He's got an inherent printed brutal keyword, and more importantly, he's got the Bloodthirst specialization, where if an enemy unit, if a unit dies at his planet until the end of the combat phase, he gets basically double attack value. So with 4 damage, he's attacking for 6. If you can trigger Bloodthirst, it's going to be 12. And Barzul is still Hail, so if you can keep Rograx reasonably hard-hitting, reasonably, sitting there alive, that can just be a huge amount of punishment you could toss out toward your opponent. At planet number 2, we see one of the Warlord friends in the Bloodied Reavers. 2-cost, 1 command icon, 2/2 unit that gets a +2 attack value bonus, provided a Warlord is sitting at its planets. And now things are going to be reasonably difficult for Archon Salaine Morn here. Planet number 1 currently under contest is going to be Karnath. It's that planet that allows you to trigger the battle ability of any other planet, so it could be drawing one of the top 3 cards off of your deck, it could be healing, it could be Yvarn, which, spoiler alert, it might be that for our Chaos player, probably not for our DE activator. And then planet number 5 there, Boundless, is going to be that forced random card discard planet. So, our players are deciding where exactly they want to go. Rograx Bloodhand is going to be entirely immune to the likes of Archon's Terror. Looks like Archon Salaine Morn, terrible or not, shows up to planet number 5 to get a couple of cards from that planet. She's also going to elicit a forced random card discard, and it looks as though Liz has got a little bit of a dearth of cards in hand because that Dark Eldar player is going for card choke. Planet number 1, where Barzul arrives, that is going to be no cards because of Archon's Palace once again exhausting. That's 3 cards denied for the cost of the card that the support is printed on, and 2 resources. So planet number 1 is just going to be 1 resource to the right for Liz. Planet number 2 is going to be 2 cards to the left for Colin. Planet number 4 is going to be a resource for Colin, and as I mentioned earlier, planet number 5 is going to be another couple of cards for Colin here. So he's got quite a few resources, but to stem the terrible tide of Barzul, he's going to have to do something to push back this Chaos faction onslaught. Looks like that's going to be another planet won by Liz. That's going to be 2 red and 2 blue icons. And what exactly are our players triggering? It looks as though it's going to be Yvarn, so that's going to be a free copy of Ravenous Fleshhounds. Free 5-cost unit is never too bad to see, and that's going to be a free Void Pirate put out by Archon Salaine Morn there, so I definitely think Liz got the better end of that bargain. And looks like it's going to be another HQ phase having come and gone, so the initiative should be bouncing back to Colin, I believe, although I'm not... Okay, yeah, so it's currently on Barzul. It's perched upon his head as a Glavodan eagle always should be. So, planet number 1 is Eloith. It's that planet where upon winning it, you get to look at the top 3 cards of your deck and add one of those to your hand. Now, Archon Salaine Morn graciously accepts the gift of a, genetically and cybernetically enhanced eagle from Barzul, It's always nice to see an act of kindness between adversaries here. At planet number 4, our last planet, we've got another copy of Void Pirate being played out by our Archon. And let us see here. There's a huge resource discrepancy between both of our players. What can Colin do to salvage the game here? What he basically has to do is he has to damage some of these Chaos faction units that Liz has. She's going to be heavily incentivized to either show up to planet number 1 and obliterate our standing Dark Eldar forces, or otherwise she can show up to planet number 2 and in doing so set herself up nicely to win the game on the following round. Liz puts out a copy of Gleeful Plague Beast to planet number 2, and if she were to send her Warlord and associated retinue to that planet, what I like about that play is you'll be dealing a point of damage to each and every unit you have, and it'll make your units, well, I like it and I don't like it. What I like about it is that it makes your units immune to inevitable betrayal, the signature event of Archon Salaine Morn, which you can blank the text box of any number of undamaged enemy units, like those Ravenous Fleshhounds with blanked text boxes won't be able to heal. Rograx won't have Brutal, he won't have Bloodthirst, the Gleeful Plague Beast won't. Well, it doesn't have any combat-relevant abilities regardless, but that's a great play, but at the same time, it also would open up Liz to be the target of Clavex War Leaders dropping into play and just dispatching her units without too much thought about it. So let us see what, if anything, Archon Salaine Morn can do to try to block off the loss of a game here. So Archon would have to show up at planet number 1. She's a reasonably formidable unit as a 2/7. The 2 copies of the Ravenous Fleshhounds are going to be arriving exhausted at planet number 1. The same thing goes for Rograx Bloodhand. The crappy thing, though, is Barzul, as his ability, after some of those units are dealt damage, he can bring it back onto himself, and then he can not only attack with Brutal, but if you don't have damaged units, then you can't benefit from Clavex War Leader. It's 3/3 for the cost of 4, 2 command icons, but it's got that incredibly powerful reaction where you can just outright destroy target enemy damaged unit. And because we've yet to see Legions of Death, we don't have Backlash as an option to protect some of these elites, and therefore things could go all the way bad for Liz. Looks like she does decide to be a little bit bold and audacious going to planet number 1. She's not going to be doing that Gleeful Plague Beast setup. By the way, the Gleeful Plague Beast is a 5-cost 1 command icon 3/5 that deals damage to all units at its planet as a forced reaction upon the onset of the combat phase. And now we're going to have to see the character of Archon Salaine Morn here. Is she going to be able to stave off this flood of chaos elites? Planet number 1 is going to be 2 cards to the left for Colin because of that Bloodied Reavers having 1 command icon, which breaks that otherwise tie between our 2 players. Planet number 2, I can only imagine that once again, Archon's Palace is going to be doing just work, shutting off another card, so that's going to be 4 cards denied for Liz. Planet number 3 is going to be a resource there to the left for Colin. Note, the Void Pirates at planet 1 is going to be an additional card for Colin, and then at planet number 4, Colin's going to pick up a total of 3 cards, and he has got a metric shit ton of resources, and he has a ton of cards in hand. Liz has like 2 cards, so let's hope for her sake that she's got enough volume of units to just overcome our relatively weak Dark Eldar cabal here. But certainly we could see ambushing Shadowed Thorn's pillagers, but this is not a red planet, so we're not going to see any kind of resource reduction for the first of those units, but it's not as if our Archon really needs it, just based on how many resources she's got there to the left. But Bloodied Reavers, of course, is in full effect with its attack bonus. It's sitting there at 4. It's going to be attacking what? What exactly are you going to attack, Colin? The answer is going to be the Ravenous Fleshhounds. There are no cultist trait tokens or army units in play. Looks like Barzul is actually going to take that damage for the Ravenous Fleshhounds. So the Fleshhounds is dealt that damage, and then after it survives, Barzul basically takes it upon himself. So now he's going to be able to attack attack for 4. Is that going to be killing the Bloodied Reavers? That is what my heart tells me, and the answer is, of course, yes. Looks like we do not see Last Breath, the signature attachment, discarded for shields. And now what exactly are we going to see? Right prior to the end of the combat round, it's going to be Archon Salaine Morn having the ability to either bloody Barzul, or she could attack, damage one of these units, and then we could see some kind of Clavex Warleader train. It looks like we've got enough resources to pay for 2 of those bastards, so that could make a considerable bit of a difference, but we've got a Shadowed Thorns Pillagers dropping into play at planet number 1, so it looks like the Dark Eldar ride their bit of a skiff down to that planet, and that is going to be a 2-attack, 2-hit point unit taking a swing at something. So what is it going to be? I believe that Clavex Warleader is readily able to attack and kill, it can use its reaction to destroy unique units if memory serves, but I suppose we may find out in short order. It looks like indeed Archon does have a couple of those units in hand, so this could still stand to go all the way bad for Elizabeth, and maybe she'll have victory stolen from her grasp at the very last moment. Yes, that's going to be 2 points of damage successfully assigned to the to the Ravenous Fleshhounds, and that's going to be a Clavex Warleader bouncing into play. That is going to be an elite destroyed, and that is why Clavex Warleader is an incredible value card. So it drops into play. It's going to be attacking for 3. It's going to be taking a swing there at Rograk's Bloodhand. No, actually, it looks like it's going to be taking a pot shot at Barzul the Hatebound. So Barzul is going to be bloodied. Now he flips over to a 3/11, but he's, of course, going to be banished from that planet. And it looks like we see a copy of Tzeentch's Firestorm being discarded as a shield, so therefore 2 damage minus 2 is going to be a, big fat 0, and it looks like Liz at the end of the combat round is going to be retreating from that planet. She does not decide to stay. Looks like we did not see that second Clavex Warleader as of yet. I imagine we probably would have seen that card had that shield not been thrown out there, but that's going to be Eloith captured for Archon Salaine Morn. She's going to have the opportunity to assess the top 3 cards of her deck and add one of those to her hand, and that is going to set the Archon up to still need to collect 2 additional planets prior to winning the game. Liz could win at planet number 1 or 2, and that's going to be a victory condition for her. So it's still kind of up in the air in regard to just how things are going to unwind here. Archon Salaine Morn is basically going to be forced to show up to planet number 1. She's going to be arriving with a large contingent of already exhausted units, but then again, Liz is going to want to send her own units to that planet as well, and Barzul the Hatebound as a 3-attack Armorbane Warlord is going to be rather difficult to remove, and let us see what exactly both of our players can bring to bear against one another. I did happen to see a copy of Inevitable Betrayal in Archon Salaine Morn's hand. Looks like we've got a copy of that Clavex Warleader and Archon's Terror, so certainly our Archon is not at a dearth of options with which to deal or attempt to deal with our Chaos faction player. But we've got a beautiful alternate art version of the Khorne Berserker at planet number 1 under the employ of Liz, 1 command icon, 2/4 with a printed brutal keyword. So again, that's normally a pretty reasonable unit alongside Barzul. You can kind of pick and choose how much damage you want that unit to have. You can have it swing reasonably hard with Brutal for a decent bit of time. Again, it kind of sucks that you have to have it slightly damaged, and it still has to be able to survive damage prior to your shifting that onto Barzul, so it's not a great effect. Like Barzul, he could have been worded ever so slightly differently and been far, far, far more powerful. But also at planet number 1, we've got the ubiquitous Warlock Destructor, just present everywhere in any deck that can include it. 2 cost, 3/4 with a command icon, forced reaction that may as well not be printed on the card at this point, because at the beginning of your deploy phase, you have to invest an additional resource in that unit or otherwise discard it. But if it's killed in combat, you just get an incredible value card. Looks like Archon Salaine Morn at some point was able to refund a resource, because we've now got Hellion Gangs at not just planet 1, but also planet number 2, and those 2/2 flyers are reasonably stubborn, and remember that upon upon receiving an attack, you have the damage prior to your option of shielding. So 4 becomes 2, and then you can throw a 2 shield card, and then you negate it entirely. So it's kind of a subtle effect, but it's nevertheless reasonably powerful. We see another alt art promotion now on that Warlock Destructor. That's going to bring it up to 3 command icons, so both of our players are even. Command phase, both players I can only imagine are going to go to planet number 1. Spoiler alert, I was right. Ravening Psychopath is also present at that planet. 2 cost, 1 command icon, 1/3 unit, and upon successfully resolving an attack, it can deal itself a point of damage in order to deal a point of damage to a target enemy army unit. So 2-pronged assaults, always nice. Kind of sucks that it can only target army units, but it's not like Archon Salaine Morn is playing Chimeras anyways. Somehow, Colin to the left must have forgotten to use the, ever-popular Beast Hunter Witches. But planet number 1, that is going to be 3 command icons for both of our players. Nobody is going to end up drawing anything. Planet number 2, that is going to be a resource to the left for Colin. Planet number 3 is going to be a total of 1 card to the left. Planet number 3 is going to be 3 cards to the left for Colin. And let us see, Liz has got the initiative token. She's got a 2/4 Brutal. She's got a 1/3 that can do that double-pronged assault. She's got the 3/5 Gleeful Plague Beast, and at the beginning of the combat round, it looks as though each of our units are going to be dealt 1 point of damage at this planet. It's going to be all friendly units, and it's going to be all enemy units. So that's going to be Barzul, and note, he's still got 10 hit points remaining if he is destroyed because he's bloody. That is going to be the game lost by Liz, but there's going to be a large number of Chaos Elites. Looks like Liz has her own unique damage tokens. Looks like we're using Infestation tokens to represent damage on the Dark Eldar side of the table here, and I could see Dark Eldar being infested with all manner of transmitted diseases of some sort. So let us see here. Like I said, Barzul is going to have the first swing. The Warlock Destructor could be handily dispatched, and that would actually be a pretty damn reasonable option. Liz is, of course, going to want to have the option to retreat, but it's going to be difficult to turn down the opportunity to just outright remove a currently 3/3 unit in that Warlock Destructor, and then it's going to be a Hellion Gang that you've got to look out for. I can see a total of 7 resources on Archon Salaine Morn's side of the table, so what does that mean? It could mean Clavex Warleader, as is abundantly sitting there in his hand. It could also be an Archon's Terror, and I can only imagine that even though we've got all of these really powerful units to try and deal with, I'm seeing a whole hell of a lot of shields there in Colin's hands. So what exactly, if anything, can Liz do to try to resist all of these units? It's going to be up to Liz to swing first. So all of these units are damaged. Liz has got 1 mystery card in hand. I am not sure if Liz has any resources or not. I think her right hand might be hiding 1 token, but it's not as if she's even got like a Warp Storm or anything like that that could help level the playing field here. So, yep, that's going to be a Clavex Warleader dropping into play, and it's going to outright just murder the Gleeful Plague Beast, it looks like. So that is going to be a modified 3/4 because of that damage token just outright removed from battle. Barzul is still going to get to swing first, but will it be the Warlock Destructor, or will it be the Clavex Warleader that he is going to remove? Yes, he takes a swing, he lifts up his Chain Axe, and he is going to just absolutely brutalize the Warlock Destructor. So all the psychic prowess of the Eldar is not going to be able to save that Warlock, as he is just rent apart by that Cornate Chain Axe. So the Clavex Warleader is going to be taking a swing. It's going to be actually killing that copy of the alternate art Khorne Berserker. Goodbye, you beautiful piece of artwork. I guess thank you for your company while we enjoyed it. And now it's going to be back to Liz. She's going to be able to do a double-pronged attack, but it does come at the cost of receiving 1 point of damage. She could potentially, she could deal a point of damage to the Hellion Gang, and so we saw Inevitable Betrayal discarded as a shield, but what we could have potentially seen is a dead Hellion Gang, 1 cut in half rounded up is still 1. It deals itself a point of damage in order to splash a point of damage, presumably to the Hellion Gang, but again, we see that prevented as well. It could have been the death of the Hellion Gang and then the death of the Shadowthorn's Pillagers that would have helped even the playing field here, but unfortunately that did not happen. Colin has drawn nothing but cards cards the entire game, as if you draw anything else during Conquest. It's not as if this is Pictionary. So, the discard of 2 shield cards negates that effect. That's going to be a Clavax Warleader taking an almighty swing, and that is going to be Rograk's Blood Hand with some damage on him, and then Archon Salaine Morn finishes the fight, and that is going to be a dead Chaos unique. Unfortunately, he was not able to activate Brutal, and even though he temporarily had a rather high attack value, unfortunately, nothing ever came from it. So, other things to look out for. We've still got Archon's Terrace, a distinct possibility. We've still got a Shadowthorn's Pillager, which could be thrown into play, but if we were going to see that, I suppose we may as well have seen it at the end of the combat round. So that could have been the Ravening Psychopath removed from the planet. But then again, you're not going to want to use up each and every one of your tricks if you're Archon Salaine Morn. So, we could possibly still see that. We may have just wanted to use a bit of a restraint here. So what exactly are we going to see? It's going to be the Ravening Psychopath once again trying to deal, well, I guess this time it can't actually do its double-pronged assault, because in order to trigger that ability, you'd have to pay 1 damage. Like, you'd have to deal it 1 point of damage as a cost, and you cannot do that, is my understanding. Or, no, I'm sorry, you can, but it will kill itself. So it does a little bit of a suicidal blow. So it attacks, the attack was shielded, then it triggers its ability, it kills itself. But in doing so, it looks like we did not see a shield card thrown out by Archon Salaine Morn, and therefore that Hellion Gang is going to be destroyed. Now it's going to be back to Archon Salaine Morn to take an attack. That is going to be the Clavax Warleader attacking the Ravenous Fleshhounds. There are no cultist trait units in play, and that those hounds are now going to be attacking for 3, but they've only got 2 hit points remaining. Not the most formidable unit in the world by any means. For the cost of 5, kind of what you're paying for is a rather durable unit, and if you don't have, Zave's Split Tongue to produce a ton of cultist tokens or something like that, they're not really a very cost-efficient card. But the Ravenous Fleshhounds do leap onto that Shadowthorn's Pillager Raider. They do eat the crew, and it looks like it's going to be back to Archon Salaine Morn to deal. Is it going to be the killing blow to the Fleshhounds? No, it's going to be 3 points of damage dealt out to Barzul the Hatebound. Absolutely no idea what exactly is sitting in Liz's hand. Maybe it's an army unit, maybe it's a shield card, but Barzul is going to take a swing. He's going to kill off a copy of Clavax Warleader. That's going to be Archon Salaine Morn killing that Ravenous Fleshhound, and now this is going to be rather difficult for Liz to try to win. At the end of the combat round, these units are going to ready. Liz is going to have the opportunity to kill that Clavax Warleader prior to its ability to attack, but then Archon Salaine Morn could deal a couple points of damage to Barzul. He'd be at 5 hit points remaining. Then we could see him hit Archon Salaine Morn. She'd be at 3 hit points remaining. Then she'd wound Barzul, and then Barzul could swing again, and that would have resulted in Archon Salaine Morn losing that battle ever so slightly, but it looks like the mathematics of combat is going to be altered dramatically because we do see a copy of Shadowthorn's Pillager being put into play at that first planet. That is going to be 2 additional points of damage to Barzul the Hatebound, and now what exactly is Liz going to do? It's not looking good for her. If she's going to retreat from this planet, she's definitely fighting a bit of an uphill battle just in regard to what she can do economically. It looks like she's maybe accepting her fate because she decides not to retreat. She's going to tempt fate. She's going to deal 3 points of damage, killing that copy of Clavax Warleader. That is going to be Archon Salaine Morn, and the Shadowthorn's Pillager dealing 4 points of damage to that unit. Barzul the Hatebound only has 1 hit point remaining. Barzul is going to take a swing. That is going to be a dead Shadowthorn's Pillager, and that is going to be the good game right there. So that is going to be a dead Barzul the Hatebound. That is going to be Archon Salaine Morn dealing out the killing blow. That was a fantastic game, so a tremendous thanks to John Gobeil, dear friend of mine, for sending me in this footage, and of course, a huge thanks as well to Elizabeth Malette of, again, the Tactical Squad podcast for allowing herself to be spectated and for everyone to enjoy this match. So congratulations to Colin Marshall for managing to win with our 3rd most recent Dark Eldar Warlord, and as always, I very much hope you all enjoyed this video. And be sure to let us know in the comments section what you thought of how these two players played, how they constructed their decks, and just what your thoughts are of Archon Salaine Morn and Barzul the Hatebound, as, you know, how do they measure up compared to their faction-specific competitive powerhouses? Do you think that someday Archon Salaine Morn may be able to challenge Packmaster Kith's place of prominence? Do you think that Barzul the Hatebound may someday threaten Zarathar's position of being the #1 Chaos faction warlord? So, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, do me a favor and hit that like button, engage with this content. If you aren't already subscribed to this channel, I would very much encourage you to do so. Be sure to hit that share button, share this game with your friends. More eyes on Conquest means we might lure more people to this game, we might get more players in this community, and the bigger we are, the greater message we send to Fantasy Flight Games, telling them to continue to support and develop this fantastic product. If at any point you'd like to get in touch with me, I would encourage you to do so through Facebook or on Twitter, and if you ever feel inclined to help support the Hive Tyrant, I would be absolutely honored, humbled, and deeply appreciative were you to make a $1 or $2 donation on a strictly monthly basis to my Patreon. But, as always, thank you so much for watching, and once again, be sure to check back in again soon for much more Conquest LCG content to come.